So it's April 5th, 2023, and just want to talk briefly tonight. Coming up on Easter this week, and it's always a time of year that I remember very well. It was April 10th, 11 years ago, that the FBI came to my office and told me that I was the target of a federal investigation, that I was going to be charged with 3 felonies: securities fraud, conspiracy, and wire fraud. And this happened 2 days after Easter. 5 o'clock in the morning, I came to my office and the FBI was waiting for me. They told me that they wanted to go upstairs and have a quick talk with me. I had known at that point that I was committing a lot of securities fraud, that I was breaking a lot of laws, and had known that it was probably only a matter of time before this was going to happen. So I went upstairs, got into my office in Boston, and sat down, and the FBI agent proceeded to take out a tape recorder and play a recording of me discussing breaking securities laws and committing crimes. And he had asked me if I knew who that was. I don't think that I answered him. And then he proceeded to tell me that right now I was facing 9 years in prison. Although that I was terrified and had the FBI in my office at 5 o'clock in the morning, so I knew that I was in trouble. When he said 9 years in prison, I thought that he was just trying to scare me. Well, I later found out that with the losses involved and the dollar amounts involved in the crime, that the federal sentencing guidelines would call, if I was to plead guilty or was convicted at trial, would call for 78 to 97 months in prison. So again, 5:30 in the morning, FBI's in my office, and so he says, right now it's 9 years in prison. Could be more, could be less. It's entirely up to you. And they offered me an opportunity to plead guilty or to consider pleading guilty in cooperating with their investigation. And they had said that if I had agreed to plead guilty, then it would be 78 to 97 months, or if I decided not to, then they would look at some of the other crimes that I had committed or deals that I had done. So, a tremendous amount of fear and anxiety. I will never forget that day. If you've had it happen to you, I'm sure you'll never forget it either. I was ultimately sentenced several years later to 1 year of home confinement, which is one of the largest departures in the history of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston. 9 years down to no prison time was a significant reduction, and a lot had happened. I had done a lot of work, but I'll tell you what I did that day to set myself up for success. A couple of things, and I'll talk with you about them now. I was extremely polite to the FBI and told them that I would consider speaking with them in their proposal, but I needed to speak with my attorney first. I had spoke with FBI later down the road and told me that many people throw them out of their office, deny committing a crime, say that they didn't do anything wrong, that they will take it to trial. I didn't do anything like that. I was very compliant with them, very polite, and told them that I would have my attorney contact them. Secondly, I sought the counsel of an attorney immediately. I didn't wait. I didn't think that the matter was going to go away. I wasn't hoping that it was a mistake, or if I didn't contact anybody, I'd be fine. They left my office at 6:30. I was immediately on the phone with my attorney, laying out all the facts of the conversation, and he later called the FBI agent that day. And then third, I put a plan in place very quickly. I knew this wasn't going away. I knew I committed a crime. I knew I was in a significant amount of trouble. I knew that I was facing the loss of my liberty and potentially my family, and I wanted to go at this as quickly and as hard as possible. A couple days later, my attorney set up a meeting with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We had a proffer. At that point, I agreed that I was going to plead guilty and accept responsibility for these charges. I agreed that I was going to make full restitution. I was fortunate enough to have the funds to do that, and I agreed that I was going to go forward and cooperate. I found out that in these situations, especially in a conspiracy, in my own experience and working with others, that the people that go in first immediately take responsibility and start working towards a better end are the ones that typically get the best deal in their plea agreement, and typically the ones that get the lowest sentence. So that's what I did. I agreed to take responsibility. I agreed to make full restitution. My restitution was $1.375 million. I paid every nickel of that back. That was my way of accepting responsibility and also setting me up for a better outcome at sentencing. And then lastly, I started to make preparation for the future. I knew at that point that I was not going to be involved with penny stocks or any other type of securities. So I started making plans for what my future would look like. I went out, I purchased a new business, which is in a completely different field, and I started working on rebuilding my life with a new company or a new line of work, which I did. I started to go out and really think about what type of community service that I could do to start giving back to the community that would be measurable. And I did a lot of community service in the city that I was living in. I helped a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous, which I've been a member of for 29 years. Now, back then it was 19, 20 years that I was involved in that program. So I started helping a lot of people in recovery, started helping a lot of people in the community. Since then, with some of the people I work with today, we do some things that are more measurable in the business world. And then I started to really, take a look at some of the changes I could make in my life. I started going out and seeking the help of spiritual directors, of mentors, of people that could counsel me to make better decisions and to set me up for success in the future. So when I was able to go to sentencing in June of 2016, the judge looked at my guilty plea, looked at my extensive cooperation, my restitution, my willingness to pay back, over $1.3 million. In way in advance, I had that bill paid with the U.S. Attorney's Office. And some of the things that I had done since my arrest, I was in a completely new job. I was working within the community. I was helping people in the recovery community, and I was helping people to better their lives. And I was continuing to seek the help of mentors, business counselors, sponsors in Alcoholics Anonymous, people that would set me up for success. So when the judge ultimately sentenced me to 1 year of home confinement, she had the idea that I was moving in the right direction, and she was convinced at that point that there was a good chance that she wasn't going to see me in front of her again. So, in the words of the FBI agent that I was working with along the way, as I came close to the sentencing, he said, "You really need to give the judge something to hold their hat on. That they're if they decide to give you some leniency in this matter, that they're not going to see you again in front of their court in 6 months, a year, a couple of years." And then I think my sentencing judge, as serious as she took my crime, and she took it very serious, that she had an inclination that I was making some changes in my life and I was trying to better myself. And I think ultimately my extensive sentence mitigation work was the key in me obtaining a non-custodial sentence. When I went on, I think it was June 16th of 2016 for my sentencing, I had no doubts that I could have done one more thing to better myself or to put myself in a better position for the best possible sentence. There wasn't one thing I could have done better. I left everything on the table with my post-arrest work, and I was convinced that if I was to get sentenced to prison, there was nothing else that I could have done. And that's what I try to do today when I work with people. Work with a lot of people in the Boston community, in New York, in Florida, securities fraud, healthcare fraud, things of that nature. And I really try to drill home to them, like, let's do as much work as possible so when we get to sentencing, we don't look back and say, geez, I wish I could have done more. So if the FBI has come to see you to talk with you, if they've arrested you, if you've got a target letter, if you've been indicted, any of the above, and you want to talk about your case or have some anxiety or talk about what would be the best options for you in the plan of sentence mitigation, I've got my contact details down below. Feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to discuss your matter with you.